Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. The NBA is back, which means it's time to shoot your shot on Hard Rock Bet. You're home for hoops action all season long. Need a little help with your first bet? Check out the streaks heating up inside the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. You can find live odds to bet on all these streaks right in the Hard Rock Bet app. The Hornets have failed to cover the spread in 10 straight games as home favorites. The Cavs have covered the spread as a road underdog against the Eastern Conference 8 times in a row. The Cavs are also on a 7-game winning streak against the Atlantic Division. The Orlando Magic have covered the spread in 4 straight games as home favorites. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there's still plenty of time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. Plus, all week on Hard Rock Bet, you can get an NBA parlay boost for the games. There's new promos every day. You can boost your same-game parlay or your same-game parlay max so your bet pays extra winnings. And on Wednesday, if you're already betting on the Hard Rock Sportsbook app, you know what that means. It's the last day to use your legendary rewards drops. Open up the app today. You could have a bonus bet or who knows what's in there. More drops every Thursday. The rewards and promos are nonstop. Download the Hard Rock Bet app today to make your first deposit. All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. Night 2 of the NBA regular season. All sorts of bizarre stuff. The Clippers go on the road into Utah and get their butt kicked. The Hawks team that everyone's been so high on gets demolished in the paint at home by the Toronto Raptors. All sorts of weird results all around the league. But we're going to be covering the nationally televised games tonight, focusing in on what I thought was one of the singular most dominant regular season performances I've ever seen from Victor Wembanyama as he goes for 40 and 15 on the road in Dallas, utterly embarrassing Anthony Davis on his home floor. We're going to be breaking that game down from the perspective of both teams. And then the early ESPN game, the New York Knicks showcasing some new offensive principles, get a win against a shorthanded Cleveland Cavaliers team. Those of you guys who want to hear about the other games, obviously I was unable to focus on so many games going on at once, but we have a mailbag coming on Friday. So if you have questions about any of the other games in tonight's slate, I plan on getting caught up on them tomorrow morning, and we'll be covering them in the Friday mailbag. I might hit 1 or 2 of them tomorrow night as well. So we will get to all these teams eventually, but you guys know the deal. It's very hard to get to them when they're all playing at the same time. Just focusing on the 2 nationally televised games tonight. If you have questions surrounding those 2 games, drop them in the chat. Me and Jackson will be going through some questions at the tail end of the show before we get out of here tonight. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Don't forget about our podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. Like I said, don't forget to leave a rating and a review. Jackson's been doing incredible work on our social media feeds, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us over there. Last but not least, mailbag on Friday. Drop your questions in the YouTube comments. Again, mailbag, write your question in our full episodes on YouTube. We'll get to them in our mailbags on Fridays throughout the remainder of the season. All right, let's talk some basketball. So there are these moments in NBA history where you can tell that things have changed. And you can feel that all of a sudden the landscape of the league is shifted because of the rise of a transcendently great star that just does everything differently than the people that came before him. I think about LeBron back in his 3rd season, pushing the Detroit Pistons to 7 games. It was just unheard of to see a player his age, basically 20 years old, taking a flawed roster toe-to-toe with one of the titans of the NBA. Or in 2013, Steph Curry in Madison Square Garden, dropping 54. And you're like, holy shit, this is different. this is going to change the game. And tonight felt like one of those moments. It felt like Victor Wembanyama, in addition to obviously making some leaps in his skill development, which we'll talk about, but it also seemed like a confidence moment for him. He seemed to be abundantly aware of the fact that he wasn't just the best player on the floor, but that he was far and away better than all of those dudes. And this was a game that had Anthony Davis in it. This was a game that had the number 1 overall pick and the number 2 overall pick and the defending rookie of the year on the court, all sorts of talent. And Victor's looking around like, I'm on a completely different level than these guys. It was one of the singular most dominant regular season performances I've ever seen. Victor walked into Anthony Davis's house and completely embarrassed him for the world to see. He utterly dominated him on both ends of the floor. And it wasn't just like he was doing damage. It reminded me of like Luka in Game 7 versus Phoenix, where he seemed to want to humiliate him. He seemed to want to specifically target Anthony Davis in one-on-ones just to prove that he couldn't guard him. He mixes him up one-on-one in the end of the first half and shoots that little right shoulder fade over him, gets the and one. He's screaming on the ground. He drives through his chest just to prove that he can score through him, drops his shoulder, bumps him off, and hits that little pop shot off the glass. Then late in the game, just for good measure, he blows by him in transition, in semi-transition, just kind of squares him up on the wing, goes right around him and dunks on his ass. He didn't just want to win that game or fill the box score. He wanted to snatch Anthony Davis's confidence. And that's exactly what he did. And you could literally feel it. Both Cooper Flagg and Anthony Davis in particular, they looked shook, like literally shook. Cooper Flagg is a player that has specifically impressed me as a guy who can make reads at an extremely high level. And Cooper looked like he had no idea what to do with Victor at the basket in the third quarter. Turning the ball over, forcing it through his chest. At one point, it looked like he tried to shoot on Victor at the rim, literally just because he wasn't going to be able to get a pass out anyway, because Victor's arms were everywhere on that kick out. Anthony Davis, like literally physically shrunk away from the game. He looked like his motor got snatched. And again, this is a guy that can struggle with motor from time to time anyway. We're going to talk about AD later because I've been kind of disappointed in him throughout camp as well. But that was just an unbelievable, both mentally, emotionally, and physically dominant game from Victor Wembanyama. Last season, we talked about this after the year, if you guys remember. Victor had taken kind of a perimeter-based approach that was very heavy on high variance, long jump shots. We talked about how he was almost kind of playing the role of a movement shooter, taking absurd amounts of threes. And he shot the ball well for long stretches, had big games. But he was also susceptible to going cold, and he didn't really have anything that he could reliably go to when things got tough in the half court. And so he spent all summer working on 2 key traits to address that concern. One, he built up his strength. We talk about this on the show all the time. Weight room is one of the most underrated parts of the game of basketball. It's a contact sport. Everything is physical. You're fighting for position for a defensive rebound. That requires strength. You're fighting for position for an offensive rebound. That requires strength. You're fighting for post position. That requires strength. You're trying to set a screen. That requires strength. You're trying to get open on the perimeter with like a V cut or just trying to create a passing angle for someone to throw you the ball. That requires strength. You're on the drive and somebody beats you to the spot or meets you with physicality or heck, fouls you on one of the dozens of fouls every single game that goes uncalled. You have to power through that with strength. And Victor Wembanyama spent the time this summer building up his strength. The second piece of it is footwork. We talk about this. Footwork is the vehicle with which you deploy your strength. It's how you actually plant your body in the ways you need to move it to the spots on the floor you're trying to get to. And he spent all summer working on his footwork, specifically step-through moves out of counters that got him going towards the basket rather than going away from the basket. And he looked completely and utterly unguardable tonight. He's getting to this move where like he'll kind of pick up his dribble and have his pivot foot set like he's about to take a right shoulder fade, and then he'll just step forward with that left foot, and if you bump him, he'll meet that physicality and just shoot a little tiny bank shot, and if you don't, he's laying it up off of a step-through move from 15 to 17 feet from the basket. I don't have the box score in front of me. I think he was 16 for 21 tonight. 16 for 21 against that Dallas team that's just packing 7-footers in the lane because he's built up that strength and that footwork. Again, this is the same Anthony Davis that I've been on the record as saying he's put on too much muscle. And Wemby was bullying him. And it wasn't just AD. He was cooking all of the Dallas centers and forwards. And we haven't even talked about defense yet, where he's already the best player in the world by a mile. His presence around the basket tonight played the Mavs into an absolute disaster of a night offensively. Poor Cooper Flagg, in addition to having to make his NBA debut at point guard for a team that's incredibly light on ball handling and shooting, he has to do it with Victor Wembanyama trolling the paint. And it's a matchup because of Dallas's roster construction that allows Victor to park his ass right underneath the basket where he can disrupt everything. Cooper was pretty bad. All sorts of poor decisions in the middle of the floor. He had a weird stretch in the third quarter where he settled for a couple of really bad mid-range jump shots off the bounce early in the clock. Very unlike him. Again, I think that's a factor. It's a byproduct of the impact that Victor Wembanyama was having on the game mentally for Dallas. But I couldn't even be mad at Cooper. Anthony Davis has been in the league over a decade, and he looked completely lost. Wemby just broke the Mavs tonight on both ends of the floor, every bit as much on defense as he did on offense. Again, even when guys would get to the basket, like Cooper had a play in the first half where he just toasted his man off the dribble. I think it was Carter Bryant, and just Wemby's there, and he's just like, shit, there's nothing I could do, and he's just kind of like looking for a kick out pass, and he's got to throw it backwards to someone who's not open because there's no way to pass through Wemby to the open man who's on the other end of the floor because Wemby's just swallowing everything up there in the middle. I spoke on Monday about our MVP race, and I predicted that Shea would win because I just think Oklahoma City is going to win the most games. I think Shea looks even better than he did last year, and it just kind of feels like one of those things where he's going to have the best case when the time comes. But I spoke about how I thought the best long shot after those top 3 candidates in Vegas was Victor. And my thought process is pretty simple. He's able to put up the numbers in the production. And his roster, again, like we're going to talk about the young players in a minute. I thought the San Antonio young core was super impressive tonight, actually. But again, what happens a lot with young, talented basketball players is inconsistency, right? They struggle to replicate when things go right, and they struggle to trim the fat when things are going wrong. And so there's going to be ups and downs with the Steph Castle, Devin Vassell. I mean, Keldon Johnson's been around a little while now, but can be mistake prone and have bad nights. So like, it's not going to all be pretty all season long. This is a young and flawed San Antonio roster, but like he's got substantially less to work with, Victor does, than a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or a Nikola Jokic. And if he does what he did tonight, which is single-handedly break a basketball team on both ends of the floor, and he's able to drag the Spurs to 52, 53, 54 wins, and they're the 3 seed, that's the MVP. Because the other teams, Houston, Oklahoma City, Denver, they're working with substantially more talent up and down the roster. And so, like, I talked about Victor as a long shot for MVP. If what we saw tonight is a sign of things to come, it might not be that much of a long shot. I was also super impressed by San Antonio's young players tonight. Steph Castle, obviously coming off a Rookie of the Year campaign, just a super dynamic athlete. the job he was doing defensively, forcing turnovers with his pressure, picks D'Angelo Russell at half court, goes the other way for a bucket. I was super impressed all night long with San Antonio's transition play. They were converting the bad misses and turnovers from Dallas into quick pushes the other way. Everyone was running their lanes really well, and they were making quick, smart decisions. Lob dunks, layups, corner threes, trailer threes. Good looks every single time down the floor in transition off of the misses and turnovers. And Steph Castle in particular, I thought his passing in transition was amazing. He has like really good natural feel for lob timing, connected on a bunch of lobs tonight. And then his ability to get into the paint. And the key with this, and he was even showing it in the half court. He had a good big one late where he drove by Ryan Nembhard and got a dunk, had a couple of dunks, had a transition dunk as well. He plays off of 2 feet with a really strong and wide base. And we talked about strength earlier. A lot of times when you're driving to the basket, it's not, cutting into an open gap and just getting wide open, uncontested layups. The vast majority of the time, especially against good defenses, there's going to be a little bit of a battle physically somewhere in the drive. The guy is going to, even if you make a good move and you beat him, he's going to slide with you, and he's going to have his chest on your shoulder, and he's going to be trying to dislodge you from your drive. We've talked about this concept with Luka Doncic on defense before, but in general, the idea of like turning straight line drives into a banana drive, right? Like a straight line drive is really difficult to rotate out of, but a banana drive, you can get some guys to have that extra second to cover ground and to get into position to help and to rotate out to shooters, right? How do you do that? When the guy's driving, you're bumping him. You're hitting him with your chest. You're sliding. You're not fouling, but you're bringing physicality at the point of attack. Steph Castle will blow through that contact because he plays wide. He's got strong shoulders. He plays off of 2 feet. And then once he gets into his jump stop around the basket, again, he's bumping you off, and he's kind of creating a little circle of space around him where he can just elevate up and finish with 2 hands in traffic. And he's got great vertical, like standing vertical leaping ability that gives him the ability to just dunk in traffic. Again, the story of the Spurs season, Spurs fans, if you're wondering what the potential of this team is, it's going to come down to these guys and their consistency. I think Steph finished with what, like 22, 7, and 6 or something like that. That's a great stat line. If he averages something close to like 18, 6, and 6, 19, 6, and 6, that's a positive indicator of the potential of this group. Devin Vassell didn't shoot the ball particularly well tonight, but I thought he had some really nice transition pushes as well. Had a couple of really nice, like full speed, soft touch finishes off the glass in transition. Again, he was a big part of that transition attack, but if Devin Vassell shoots the ball particularly well this year. Keldon Johnson, he had an awesome run there at the end of the third quarter when Victor Wembanyama was off the floor, when Dallas was trying to reassert some control, where he played really well and helped stiff arm Dallas in that run. Dylan Harper got off to a rough start, but he made plays, especially getting to the rim as a cutter and in transition. He found ways to get easy baskets at the rim just by staying perpetually in motion off the ball. One of the things with Dylan too, like one of the things I watch with young players, and by the way, this is why everyone was so high on Steph Castle. Maybe the efficiency is not there. Maybe the ability to actually pay off the sequence by knocking the shot down isn't there yet, and it may take a couple more years, right? But Dylan can get to his spots. He felt comfortable getting downhill, and even on those like little mid-range pull-ups that he missed, it felt like he had separation, it felt like he had good footwork, and it felt like he had lift. So then, it's just polishing up the jumper at the end of the shot, right? That's how you finish that sequence off. But the ability to get to his spots is key. Juxtapose that with like Reed Sheppard last night. Reed Sheppard is renowned for his shooting ability as a prospect, but he seemed like he had a hell of a time getting to his spots against, albeit a very difficult Oklahoma City perimeter defense core. But I was just impressed overall by Dylan athletically tonight. He just looked like he belonged as a lead guard in the NBA. Just a remarkably impressive debut for the Spurs. And the story of their season and where they get is going to come down to how often Victor can get to that level and how often these young players off of him can get to that level. It's going to be a consistency game. Again, like we talked about, young players can struggle to replicate successes. If they can replicate successes, then all the Spurs fans that were telling me I was wrong all summer for having them kind of down closer to the play-in, you guys will be right. But it's going to start with that consistency. But you can't do much better than they did tonight. Again, a dead serious Western Conference opponent went into their house and utterly embarrassed them. On the Mavs front, we talked a little bit about some of the issues with Cooper. With Anthony Davis, one of the things that's been really discouraging for me, in addition to the obvious stuff, like, dude, you got traded last year. How are you not coming into the season with a level of conditioning and polish that a player that wants to exact revenge on the league would typically bring? Instead, it was reported that he came in bigger than he's ever been. And it looks like he's struggling to beat people off the dribble. All of his drives tonight look just like they did in preseason, where he just picks a direction and goes, gets beat to the spot, jumps up, yells, and falls on the ground while throwing up a floater that misses, and then the team's running the other way in transition. It's been like that for a few years, in large part because AD has added weight and lost polish. And that's where it gets tricky with the stuff about him wanting to play at the 4. And by the way, that's like a prerequisite for this Dallas team as currently constructed to get to where they want to go, because their best players are all loaded up in the front court and they've got 2 starting caliber centers. So if you're going to find minutes for them, AD's got to play the 4. And if AD is going to play the 4, he has to bring a certain level of dribble, shoot, and pass polish. And it's been kind of this there's been a difference between Anthony Davis's vocal politicking for playing the power forward position and the work he's put in behind the scenes to polish his game the way you need to if you're going to play the 4 in the modern NBA. And look, not every team's going to have Wemby, but you're going to see a lot of the same kind of stuff. A lot of bodies in the paint while Anthony Davis is clanking mid-range jump shots and Cooper Flagg is clanking mid-range jump shots. And D'Angelo Russell's coming off of a ball screen, taking some contested floater or jump shot in the mid-range or trying to grift his way to the foul line. It's going to be a lot of that until Anthony Davis actually brings the requisite amount of polish you need to play that position in the modern NBA. It's different now. Even just in 2020, the league was different. And by the way, Anthony Davis in that playoff run was one of the best jump shooters in the league. So, in order for Anthony Davis to accomplish what he wants to accomplish, which is to show the league that the Lakers made a mistake trading him for Luka Doncic, and to show the league that he can play the 4, he's got to get in better shape. He's got to become more mobile on the perimeter, and he's got to be better at dribble shooting and passing the basketball than he is. I mean, that was he got absolutely embarrassed by Victor Wembanyama tonight. And then just in general, the complete and total lack of ball handling on the roster. One of the things that specifically stood out to me was the difference between that and what it looked like for Houston last night. Houston lacks ball handling. Houston lacks shooting. But Houston has these 3 real matchup problems that they present. Alperen Şengün, obviously, as this, he played like a superstar last night. Let's not gloss over it. He was scoring in the high 30s, dropping dimes, dominating the glass, bringing physicality to the position, knocking down wing threes, posting up Alex Caruso, posting up Chet Holmgren. Şengün brings an enormous amount of singular offensive greatness to the table. The Rockets ran their offense through Amen Thompson down the stretch in regulation. Just slot ISOs versus Kisson Wallace. He brings a lot of individual matchup problems to the table for their opponents. And then Kevin Durant is Kevin freaking Durant. And what you're seeing with Dallas is the same lack of ball handling, the same lack of shooting, except for their primary offensive players are Cooper Flagg, who I think is going to be a great NBA player for a long time, but right now is not a very good scorer. He's a read maker. He's a guy that greases the wheels for an offense. And then you've got Anthony Davis, who's been disappointing for all the reasons we discussed earlier. And then you fall off a cliff from there to a very old Klay Thompson that's not really going to hit shots unless he's open. And D'Angelo Russell, who, again, is a guy that is a nice pickup for the discounted role that he's playing, but that's not going to go toe-to-toe with the best ball handlers in the league. And so it just kind of was glaring to me, the difference between Houston's got some roster imbalances, but they've just got much better top-end talent. And that was the big difference watching them versus watching Dallas. One game, Victor broke you. Obviously, it's going to be a long season. A lot of things can change. I've rooted for Anthony Davis for a long time. He does eventually get in shape. 10, 15 games in the season, he'll drop 5, 10 pounds. The jumper will be a little smoother. The hand will be a little smoother. Competitively, you got to think AD's, man, if AD doesn't come out in game 2 and just annihilate whoever he's playing, like I want to see the competitiveness. I want to see the fire. I want to see him fight after what was an embarrassing night tonight. But that's all I got on that game. Let's move on to Cavs Knicks, just briefly on this game. The Knicks controlled this game from the jump, playing new offense. They're essentially just playing with a lot of pace, pushing the ball in transition. They're having more sequences where Jalen Brunson is not bringing the ball up the floor, but rather starting in the corner and coming off of action after the defense has already shifted. They're using him as a screener more, essentially just trying to take advantage of what is a roster strength for the Knicks. And I think this is an appropriate direction for the Knicks to go. And this is why you make a coaching change. This is a system, coming from Sacramento with Mike Brown, where he was having a lot of 3-man action, a lot of like getting the ball side to side and different ball handlers involved. He's just trying to implement similar action. And, this is a New York Knicks roster that has a lot of ball handling, right? Like Jalen Brunson can make plays with the basketball. Karl-Anthony Towns can make plays with the basketball. So can OG. So can McHale. So can Deuce McBride. Tyler Kolek came in and played some really nice advantage creation basketball tonight. You've got ball handling, so you need to use that. Pushing in transition is generally more efficient, right? NBA teams are roughly 20% more efficient in transition. So you push in transition, you just get yourself more opportunities to score at a higher clip, right? It creates early advantages. The entire purpose of running action is to get a guy open so that you can play drive and kick basketball. If you can do that, if you can accomplish that by pushing the ball up the floor, then great. But it also saves more time on the shot clock for multiple attacks. That's where you take advantage of your aggregate ball handling. The Knicks had games last year where all 4 of their big 4 would go for 100 points. The key is trying to get that to happen more often, to have that become more of the norm rather than the exception. They had 5 players tonight score at least 15 points. There was more rhythm going down the roster. The Knicks generated 35 catch-and-shoot jump shots tonight. They averaged 25.5 per game last year in the regular season. Substantial increase there, albeit in just one game. But a big part of it that I liked, and this was something I noticed throughout the game, letting other guys bring the ball up the floor, not named Jalen Brunson. More action where it's OG Anunoby bringing the ball up the floor, Mikal Bridges bringing the ball up the floor, Deuce McBride bringing the ball up the floor. By doing that, you help in a couple of key ways. One, you prevent Jalen Brunson from wearing down against ball pressure. I saw a similar approach from the Lakers at times last night, where they would have him just run up to the corner and have someone else bring the ball up the floor, rather than have Luka have to waste a bunch of energy turning his man, dealing with a defender that turns him 3 or 4 times before he gets up the floor, right? The second piece of it is you get more opportunities to attack out of the corner and off-ball action. This helps in 2 ways. One, it gets the defense to shift first. So when the ball handler comes up the floor, the defense is keyed in on them. You move the ball side to side and then get your man attacking. The defense has to shift side to side. That can loosen it up a little bit. And then the second piece of it is one of the best ways to beat ball pressure is to not have to dribble. When Jalen Brunson can use his hands to shed the defender with a swim move, to then come off the action and then catch and get right downhill. By the way, Jalen missed some shots tonight that he usually makes. He had a little floater coming off of one of those pin downs off the left side that he just happened to smoke. He missed some shots tonight that were really good looks for him coming off of those actions that will go in over the course of this season. And by the way, him and Cat both just looked a tiny bit out of rhythm in preseason when I was watching them too. And like, this is to be expected. When you change your system, when you change the style that you play, it's one of those things that can lead to a little bit of a rhythm. It can lead to a little bit of like a period of growing pains, so to speak. So that goes without saying. But in general, I thought they just kind of had more verve and more intensity down the roster, fueled by the fact that everyone is involved. I also thought they kind of kept some of that classic Knicks grittiness that they've shown in recent years, especially on the offensive glass. Like they had 8 different players secure an offensive rebound tonight. I thought they came out with impressive energy and just competitiveness in this game. Kenny Atkinson actually referenced it at halftime to his team, but he thought the Knicks came out and punched him in the mouth, and that's exactly what they did. And again, I still think there's lots of room for improvement there. There's a lot of looks that got missed. Brunson missed a bunch. OG missed several easy ones early in the game. I really liked the job that Tyler Kolek did when he came in the game. Him and Deuce McBride did awesome off the bench. Deuce just bringing kind of like aggressive movement shooting. And then Tyler Kolek, like, this is the important piece. When you're trying to play that advantage basketball where everyone's involved and everyone's driving closeouts and the ball's moving side to side, it starts with that initial advantage. And in order to get that initial advantage, you need to run an action, and out of that action, have a player that can make the read. And the read that Tyler Kolek kept making tonight, and he made several good ones. Like there was a switch where he was able to feed the ball to Karl-Anthony Towns, and Karl-Anthony Towns drew a foul. But one of the reads that he kept making tonight was the cross court to the opposite wing. A lot of times when you come off of an action, the low man who's guarding the opposite corner will slide in underneath the basket, right? And then as kind of like a preliminary X out, so to speak, the guy who's guarding the opposite wing will drop to the corner, and then the low man will try to rotate back out to the wing. It's like an X out, but a lot of teams will do it early. And to have that top wing guy drop to the corner, because a lot of times when guys get downhill, they want to fire it to the corner. And you'll see a lot of turnovers there where like the low man steps over and the guard fires the pass to the corner, and that guy drops from the wing and jumps right into the passing lane and gets an interception, right? Tyler was rifling it across his body to the opposite wing, and he generated a couple of like butt naked 3-point shots that didn't go in. And like, I just think he makes a lot of sense as a guy that just kind of keeps that engine flowing when he comes into the game, brings the ball up the floor, makes a quick decision with the basketball out of an early read, out of an early action. Then they can just play their driving kick out of that. Overall, an impressive opening showing. Again, they hit a little bit of a lull in the third quarter. Part of it was Donovan Mitchell came out and went on a crazy scoring run. Donovan had this weird game where he came out and was like not looking to be aggressive at all. And the Cavs didn't look like they knew what to do. And so Evan Mobley just kept jacking up shots early in the game, took a couple of settled, like kind of mid-range jump shots. We'll talk about Evan in a minute. But the Cavs looked all discombobulated on offense in the first half. But to start the second half, Donovan came out and was like, screw all that. I'm going to get going as a scorer. And he threw a hell of a punch, and the Cavs went on a run and they pushed it close. But overall, they continued to play good basketball throughout the game. They stiff-armed them, kept going on little runs, and they were able to put this thing away in the fourth quarter. Good start for the Knicks. On the Cavs front, it is jarring, and this dates back to the playoff series, and this is a big part of why I wasn't as down on Cleveland as everyone else was after the disappointing playoff performance. I just think Darius Garland is incredibly important to this team. We talked a lot about the idea of advantage creation with Tyler Kolek earlier, right? And just in general, from like transition pushes and things along those lines that start the engine of the Knicks drive and kick. Well, Darius Garland is the guy who does that for Cleveland. The problem with Donovan Mitchell, and we discussed this in our player rankings, and it's why I'm not quite as high on him as some of the other people are that cover the league, but Donovan can be a little tunnel vision, and he can just kind of look for his shot. He's not as good at like using the power of his scoring ability to take advantage of the defense reacting to him and take easy kick out reads to start the engine of the offense. A lot of times he's just hunting really difficult shots, and he's a very good difficult shot maker. And when he's making them, he can be unbelievable. And I'm not going to sit here and be overly critical because this is a guy that continues to average 30 points a game efficiently in every playoff run. So shout out to Donovan Mitchell, the scorer. But in order to this Cavs team that was playing with incredible pace, that was generating a ton of quality three-point shots last year, it was fueled by the job that Darius Garland did, knifing into the teeth of the defense early in possessions with his speed, not to score the basketball, but to kick to shooters. And then the Cavs were just really good at playing read and react basketball out of that. And so that was the first thing that stood out to me, was just not having Darius out there. The second piece of it is like when you start to take Darius out and then you take Max Strus out, they start to become pretty light on that refined offensive skill. Like their big shot the ball well tonight. Evan Mobley hit some threes. Larry Nance hit some threes. I actually really like the Larry Nance fit, just bringing some shooting to the 5 spot and just his ability to drive closeouts. And he can also play alongside another one of their bigs. Like Larry Nance, it looked good tonight. I was happy with it. He got in trouble with Kenny Atkinson once for leaking out in transition and giving up an offensive rebound and got called for timeout. Kenny called a timeout to chew his ass. But like I thought Larry Nance looked good. Evan Mobley shot the ball well, but the rest of the perimeter court is a lot of Jalen Tyson, who struggled at times to guard Darius or to guard Jalen Brunson, and obviously doesn't have a ton of refined offensive skill. Tyrese Proctor, like, won the lottery pick. This is a guy that is being asked to do a lot for a player of his pedigree at this point. There's a lot of Tyrese Proctor tonight. A lot of him taking pull-up threes against unders and pick and roll, or missing open threes in transition pushes. And like, there's just a lot of like guys that are being slotted up into roles that are a bit above their pay grade, in large part because of the injuries to Darius Garland and Max Strus. So try not to be overly critical of Cleveland tonight. I think Darius Garland is their engine. And if it wasn't, if them getting their ass beat by Indiana when he was injured wasn't the indicator of that, I think tonight was another indicator of that. Last kind of thought before we get out of here, before we get to our questions from the audience. Evan Mobley, a little bit of a helter-skelter game from him. I thought he came out super aggressive, which on the one hand is nice, but I thought he settled for some mid-range jump shots. And like, this is where I'd love to see him kind of do some of the stuff that we're seeing from Wemby, where there's a little bit more of a forward aggression to his high post attacks and his attacks in the middle of the floor, where he can try to get into the body of the defender a little bit and take shorter, easier shots than some of these like drifting, fading jump shots that he was taking. Another thing too is like when you're thin like Evan Mobley is, you can draw a lot of fouls that way when you bring that aggression. I mean, Wemby drew a lot of fouls today just by like, going up aggressively towards the rim and then falling down when he'd get hit because he still is thinner than some of these dudes, right? So like, I want to see a little bit more of the to the rim aggression, just to kind of allow a little bit more balance. And then what ends up happening is when you do that, all of a sudden when you start to go to those mid-rangers, you get more natural separation because the defense is playing the drive a little bit more. And now instead of it being like a heavily contested, nasty fadeaway, it's a little bit more of an up and down, rise and fire over your right shoulder type of shot that I think he does have the touch to hit at a high level. And good to see him hit some threes. Made a lot of plays defensively tonight. He competed. Again, I just want to see a little bit more downhill aggression for him on the ball as he continues to develop. All right, Jackson, let's get to our audience questions.
Let's do it. First one, we can stick on that game for just a second. What did you think of Lonzo Ball tonight? Do you feel like he can be sort of a useful piece for them, if not like an interim starter until Darius Garland is back?
So a lot of good and bad. It's so funny because Lonzo kind of reminds me of just a lesser version of Tyrese Halliburton in the sense that he has like good length and speed at the guard position. He's obviously a better defender than Tyrese. But he has length in passing lanes, kind of similar to the way Tyrese does. But the big thing that's similar to Tyrese is he just gets rid of the basketball. Every single time he touches it, it's a kick ahead pass as soon as possible. When he runs action in the half court, he gets rid of the ball quickly to the advantage. He just kind of greases the wheels. One of the things I like that he did off the ball tonight is like he kind of perpetually stays in motion, and he will provide quick little outlet opportunities to offensive players for Cleveland that get into a tough spot. Like, guy picks up his dribble, is in a tough spot. Lonzo's not just standing at the 3-point line 30 feet away. He'll flash high post and make his hands available. He got an offensive rebound that he kicked out for a 3-point shot on a play where he just kind of was lurking along the baseline on a cut. Like, there's a lot of good that I liked. But obviously he missed the shots. He had several really clean looks from three, especially in the first half. One of the most hilarious kind of like random heat check moments was he was like 0 for 5 from three. And then in the fourth quarter, late, like when the Cavs were down 10, I believe, he just like came down and took like an early clock, like pull up 27 footer and like nailed it. And then like one possession later, he took like another 27 footer and missed it. And I was like, all right, dude, you're 1 for 7. Let's chill out a little bit on the threes. And then he had a couple of his passes where he kind of just had a little bit too much dip on his chip and kind of rifled it way too hard out of bounds. He had a couple, I think he ended up with like 4 turnovers, and a few of them were just kind of sloppy cross-court passes that he was off target on. So like, I think overall I really like the fit. I think that was probably as bad as you'll see the Lonzo Ball experience if you're a Cavs fan, like missing the open shots and the turnovers. But what I did think he provided was he just provides that pace for those Cavs bench units, and I think that's going to allow them to kind of sustain some of that play when he's on the floor.
For sure. Obviously, the story of the night was Wemby, so we got a couple Wemby and Spurs related questions. First up, Wemby GOAT watch. Where are we at?
Here's all I'm going to say. He sure as hell has the potential.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all lying to ourselves if we don't think he does. I mean, I've been trying to think, Jackson. How many times have we seen a superstar not just beat one of the other superstars in the league or even outplay them, but like completely and utterly dismantle them on national television? Like,
yeah, the only other one that
crumbles
comes to mind is Luka against the Suns in the playoffs, which is a different thing, obviously. But yeah, it was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, like he emotionally dominated that game every bit as much as he, dominated with his play. I think, like, here's the thing. Health is going to be a question mark.
Mm-hmm.
I still think there's like okay, you were allowed to play one-on-one quite a bit tonight against their bigs in space. How is this going to look against more double teaming? Although I think Wemby's a good passer, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. And his thing is like he can just kind of hold the ball up here, and
he can pass over anybody. Exactly.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is like I want to see, one of the challenges for him in his career is going to be the Oklahoma City types and the teams that like are swarming and really play up underneath him rather than trying to meet him up top. I mean, if Wemby demonstrated one thing tonight, it's that big dudes cannot guard him. Like they cannot.
That was another question that I posted in the chat, and I'm going to post to you now. We got a variety of different answers from the chat. I can give those after. Who do you think is the best player in the NBA to guard Wemby, or the best type? What's the best type of player if you don't have a single player?
Man, that is a really good question. Ironically, I think a Lou Dort type would be the direction that I would go.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is like he's actually really fast and nimble, and he's so good with his footwork that even some of the bigger forwards, like even the PJ Washington types, can't really handle him down there. Where what we saw with Lou against Kevin Durant is like he can quite literally get up underneath your base and just make you uncomfortable all game long. And that can really affect some of your shot making at times. Like I even thought it affected KD's shot making, especially from the 3-point line in that game. So like I think it would be like a fire hydrant, like somewhere 6'4" to 6'5", super strong, super physical, one of those dudes who fouls you from start of the game to the end of the game, but somehow gets away with it. What's your take?
I think that's a good answer. The chat gave a variety of answers. There was a Giannis, some Giannis talk. There was someone said Jalen Williams, someone said Tumani Kamara. I think those are all. I think it's gonna. I think a mid-sized player probably makes the most sense. I was surprised I didn't see a Draymond in the chat. I think Draymond
would be interesting.
He's usually my answer for most players, frankly. I think he's a pretty good answer just because he is not too slow, but very, very strong and has super long arms as well. It's a tough one. I was trying to think of like the Lou Dort type makes sense. I was like, what about Alex Caruso? I'm like, is he too small to guard a player like Wemby? He guarded Jokic for stretches, but that's not. I don't know about a full game of Alex Caruso on Wemby either. It's a tough question.
Draymond is interesting because, let's just look at last night. Like, every Golden State Warrior was fried chicken except for Draymond.
Yeah.
Draymond was the one guy that you could tell Luka was like, I'm going to get rid of the basketball. And so with that being the case, I think Draymond, I actually think I like Draymond more than Dort. I think you got the right answer here.
Someone and it is interesting. Said Bam also, which is an interesting one. He's like a more true big, but he's so versatile.
Yeah, Bam's an interesting one, although I think Wemby would probably cook him too. I love the point you made. I think Draymond might just be the answer to everybody.
He's the answer for most, especially like alien type, because he's kind of a weird defensive alien type.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. As a Mavericks fan, are we cooked until Kyrie comes back? And then second part, someone else asked, do you think D'Lo is like a serviceable starting option until then, considering the glaring ball handling issues tonight?
Yeah, D'Lo I thought was good in the first half. He kept working his way to the foul line, which kind of was manufacturing points for them. He does a good job of hitting AD in the pocket, has a little bit of scoring ability in the middle of the floor. But then I also thought you saw an example of the downside of D'Lo where he kind of cooled off and he smoked 2 layups in the late second quarter, started missing some of those mid-range shots. I don't dislike D'Lo as an option. I think man, PJ Washington reminds me of Jabari Smith, where you could tell me, oh, that's too big, you need to go with more speed. But specifically, PJ's ability to shoot almost makes him indispensable in that lineup. And I thought the broadcast did a good job calling that out tonight. Similarly, Jabari Smith, his ability just to knock down, catch, and shoot threes kind of makes him indispensable with Houston's best lineups. Mm-hmm. So, if you're going to play PJ, then it really comes down to Clay or D'Lo. And the thing with Clay, he provides the shooting, but they're not good at finding him. There was a play. Did you see the one in the second half where they got the offensive rebound and PJ Washington had the ball in the left wing and Klay Thompson was standing 5 feet away from him, wide open? Yeah. And PJ looked him off. And then Clay showed some bad body language after that. Don't blame him. He was a wide open shooter. But I think if Clay's not actually going to get the ball and provide some real utility as a spacer, I'd almost rather go with D'Lo for just ball handling with that group. I think it slots Cooper a little bit easier as a secondary ball handler. Part of San Antonio's second half run was that ugly stretch from Cooper where he made 5 bad decisions in a row, at the rim and a couple of tough mid-range jump shots. As far as whether or not the Mavs are cooked, here's all I'm going to say. It's one game. Victor Wembanyama is an alien. He just put forth one of the most dominant performances that we've ever seen. I think that might actually be one of the worst games I've ever seen Anthony Davis play.
It was pretty bad.
So, it's hard to, go with the sweeping declarations. But the one thing that I will say is do you agree with me about the juxtaposition with them in Houston and how they just didn't have the top end firepower that Houston had?
It's a completely different thing than what Houston is doing.
Yeah. So that was the one takeaway I had that was okay, this isn't a game 1 takeaway. This is a real big picture takeaway. They just they have a bad combination of lacking offensive firepower, but also lacking spacing and refined offensive skill off the ball. And I think that's kind of a death sentence for them.
Yeah. I just think their roster construction is just right away rearing its head. You're seeing, never mind the lack of guard depth. If we were talking about what's their actual best 5-person lineup, it's probably Anthony Davis at the 5 and Derek Lively just not on the floor. But you can't really do that right now. How are you going to do that right now? You kind of can't. Their best lineup when everyone's healthy is probably something like Kyrie, Clay, Cooper, PJ, and Anthony Davis. But then you're sitting your young center and Daniel Gafford when he gets back. I just think it doesn't make a lot of sense right now.
Yeah. The other thing that was disappointing to me is I didn't think they were as good defensively as they needed to be. And by the way, this stood out to me in preseason. They're a little slow. They're not doing as much switching as you would think. They get compromised at the perimeter pretty consistently, and they get beat down the floor in transition. San Antonio ran right around those dudes a bunch of times tonight.
Yeah.
And like one of the downsides to bad offense, when you're light on handling and refined offensive skill, you're going to have a lot of turnovers. You're going to have a lot of bad shots. You're going to have a lot of bad missed jump shots in particular. And those are going to spark fast breaks where all of a sudden that lack of foot speed is going to become a problem. But yeah, like, I mean, on the one hand, you want to write off some of this as just a Wemby masterclass, but yeah, there's definitely some big picture issues with Dallas. That kind of lean with they kind of look more like the Lakers to me as a team that showed some inherent flaws on opening night.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Goldstein, in the chat for the super chat about Ant dropping 41 and icing the game. We will definitely be talking about the Anthony Edwards performance later this week at some point. It's just not tonight. Next question. Got a couple more. Do you think the Spurs were sort of looking ahead here? Do you think the Spurs could end up in a similar situation to OKC in the 2010s, especially with the current CBA, where they have 3 certified guys for the future, but they end up not being able to sort of keep all of them and one might have to go?
Yeah, so much of the development of Stephon Castle and Devin Vassell in this stretch when De'Aaron Fox is out is going to be interesting. Because there's also going to be a version here where, like, what if they turn around and flip De'Aaron Fox for more picks? Just because all of a sudden they're happy with their guard core, even if they lost it. Because I think they paid 3 first rounders for Fox, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, something like that.
And so even if they got 2 back, you start to think of it like Oklahoma City. And this is something that I think has actually been really smart about the way that Sam Presti has set this up. There's been all this talk about like, oh, well, what if they just package all these picks for, Lauri Markkanen or for Giannis Antetokounmpo? But the truth of the matter is when all these dudes get expensive, one of the ways that you can actually find discounted players in this league, a lot of people think vet min, a lot of people think mid-level exception. What I've been intrigued by now is rookie contracts. And specifically, the 2 teams that I think of when I look at this are Golden State and Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they do is they keep finding these Will Richards and they keep finding these Cason Wallaces and they keep finding these dudes that are like, they're going to make less than $10 million a year for 4 years. And they're highly tradable. And they're not going for super upside. They're going for dudes that can play in their system. Now, Cason is showing a lot of upside. Dude, did you see his 1 foot dunk in transition last night? I was like, good God. That dude's a ridiculous athlete. It's like maybe, there's some upside anyway, but that's the way I kind of look at it with San Antonio. Is I almost envision it being, you have your core 3. Let's say it's Steph Castle. Devin Vassell is an interesting player because he's actually turned into a decent little ISO scorer. He can hit some shots over the top, but he probably feels the most replaceable to me out of the 3 guards. Like what Dylan Harper and Steph Castle do is really, really unique. Whereas Devin Vassell is as a movement shooter. If you got let's just put it this way. If you got CJ McCollum on a buyout, he's going to provide 80% of what Devin Vassell can provide as a movement shooter and as a guy that can hit shots in action. Whereas Steph Castle does stuff that not many guys in the league can do. And Dylan Harper has this weird kind of pseudo SGA upside, right? So you target those 3, they all sign maxes. You got to let all of the dudes who are making mid-level salaries on your roster go one way or another. That just like Oklahoma City's going to have to let Hartenstein go, and they're going to have to let Caruso go, and they're probably going to have to let Dort go. And what they're going to do is they're going to cycle in these rookie contracts with this plethora of draft picks that they have, and they have so many of them that they can miss on some, and it's not a big deal. And San Antonio still has one heck of a trove of draft picks available. And if they convert a couple of these dudes into picks, they get a pick for Devin Vassell, if they get a pick for or 2 picks for De'Aaron Fox at some point, they could have the picks to continue to anchor the roster as the younger players get more expensive.
For sure. Last question, because I know we were texting a little bit and you were watching a little bit of the Orlando-Miami game. Did you catch any of the other games in the early window? And do you have any sort of quick, just off the top thoughts before we sort of dive into those a little more later in the week?
Again, yeah, we will dive into these later in the week, but I did, while I was watching Knicks Cavs, I watched most of the first half of Magic Heat, and it was just kind of a frustrating experience because on the very first possession of the game, they run a Bane Paolo pick and roll. off the left side, and they show at the level, and Bane hits Paolo in the pocket. Paolo's barreling downhill on a 4-on-3. They tag him on the roll, but they don't tag the dunker spot with Wendell Carter Jr. Paolo throws an easy lob, and then Wendell Carter Jr. dunks it, and then they just go away from it. And like poor Jackson, he's doing whatever he's doing this evening, and I'm just bombarding his phone with clips because I was like getting so frustrated watching that game, because it's like literally like Jackson can speak to it. I mean, like they literally just stand around and play one-on-one. It's the craziest. It's the craziest fucking thing. They stand around and they play one-on-one, and it's like stupid too. It's like Paolo's like going one-on-one against Bam, and by the way, they were hitting shots. Like I was watching, they were hitting shots and scoring the basketball this way, but process versus results, I was like, all I could think about is like, especially when you run into tougher competition down the line, like you need to maximize your talent. You maximize your talent by being more deliberate with the way that you attack. But it's funny. I ran into a guy that I was talking to, just a fan of the show that I ran into here in Denver, and he was talking to me about how he's like not super high on Paolo. And what it got me thinking about is like, we talk so much about Jamal Mosley, but like the players got to bear some responsibility for this too. And I do think Paolo deserves some blame in the sense that like he makes life harder on himself with the way that he plays sometimes too. And I know Orlando won tonight, and I'm sure I'll go watch the game, and there's a lot to be impressed by. And Desmond Bane's a great fit. He's really good. There's a lot they had some transition pushes and showed their athleticism and a lot of upside. But like, I just wish they were more deliberate and like intelligent, for lack of a better word, with the way they attacked on offense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I caught a little bit of or a good chunk of Celtics 76ers, and the two biggest takeaways were that Joel Embiid looks awful and VJ Edgecombe looks amazing. VJ Edgecombe is incredible already. He's so good, and he is a super, super, super athlete. And Joel Embiid was basically not out there.
Yeah, so I saw the VJ Edgecombe like crossover dunk against Xavier Tillman, and I was like, good God.
He was a boss.
And then I did see a brief little highlight reel of Joel Embiid seemingly unwilling to jump while he was standing around the rim.
He didn't really do anything other than he made one mid-range jumper. He was basically wide open. He foul grifted aggressively a couple times, which, shout out to foul grifting. And he kind of just, I don't know, he just looks heavy and like not hurt, but like formerly hurt. He's not moving well is basically how I would describe it.
That's depressing. Yeah, I'm excited to dig into it. Like I saw, like we're all high on the Hawks, and I saw the Pelicans went in and just destroyed Atlanta. I think they had 80-something points in the paint.
Jesus.
Allegedly, Kawhi had one of the worst games of his career as the Clippers went into Utah.
I thought it was a mistake. I thought it was a misprint on the ESPN app.
I know, and I looked at the box score and I was like, "What the hell happened?" and these were two teams in Atlanta and the Clippers that I was super high on. So like, it's a casual reminder of like, hey, let's not all overreact to one game. Like a lot of these teams are going to play better. Season openers bring a weird intensity, especially for the home team. But yeah, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow morning and over some coffee, I'm gonna watch a bunch of film, and I'll have some thoughts. I'll probably build at least one or two additional segments for tomorrow's show because we have a light slate tomorrow. I'll bring some to that game, and then again, just in the comments underneath this video, just whatever games you want to hear about, just drop your questions, and I'll get to them in the mailbag on Friday morning. All right, guys, that's all I have for tonight. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow with another slate, closing with Golden State versus Denver in the evening game. It's going to be highly entertaining one, a debut of the team that I have picked as my championship favorite. So very interested to see how they look. And Golden State looked awesome on Tuesday. So that's going to be a super interesting game. We'll be breaking it all down here on YouTube after the final buzzer. I'll see you guys then.